Welcome back to our channel, General Hospital fans. Today is a truly beautiful day to dive deep into the drama of Port Charles. We have so much to unpack, and I am absolutely vibrating with excitement over the latest developments. Grab your coffee, settle in, and let's talk about the absolute masterclass we just witnessed. I feel so incredibly electrified by the recent confrontation between Ethan Levitt and the man we have all been calling Nathan West. Because to me, it finally proved that the writers know exactly what they are doing with this identity theft storyline. When Ethan stepped out of the shadows in that dimly lit alleyway near the docks and slow clapped at Cassius Faison's lethal display of martial arts, my jaw literally dropped. I believe this is the best they have written Ethan since his return, and here is why. The way he smirked, completely unfazed by the deadly skills Cassius just displayed, perfectly encapsulated the seasoned mercenary he has become. It wasn't just a cool hero moment, it was a deeply earned character beat that honored his history as a soldier of fortune and the son of Luke Spencer and Holly Sutton. I know a lot of people in the fandom are saying this storyline with Cassius impersonating Nathan is dragging, and they have been complaining that it makes the Port Charles Police Department look incompetent. But I actually think the slow burn is exactly what's needed, because I feel like it makes Ethan's sudden, aggressive intervention so much more satisfying. The way I see it, regular cops like Dante Falconeri are looking at Nathan through the lens of procedure and brotherhood. They see what they want to see. But Ethan is a grifter, a con artist, and a mercenary. I feel a profound sense of narrative justice, that it takes a rogue to catch a rogue. When Ethan was observing Cassius at the gym, and we saw that tight close-up of Ethan's eyes narrowing as Cassius fumbled the mention of Caesar Faison's past, I felt a rush of pure adrenaline. Ethan didn't just accept the awkwardness like a civilian would. His internal alarm bells rang, and the show brilliantly conveyed that through the subtle shift in Ethan's posture. I genuinely think we're missing the point if we don't appreciate the sheer genius of the trap Ethan set. I love the way the lighting changed during that stage mugging scene, shifting from the warm, inviting glow of the street lamps to the harsh, cold neon of the alleyway. It made me feel the sudden spike in danger. Ethan didn't just ask questions. He orchestrated a highly volatile physical test. When those hired thugs jumped Cassius, I was on the edge of my seat. I think the stunt choreography here was top tier, and it backed up my take on Cassius perfectly. A standard PCPD detective would have used standard defensive tactics, maybe reached for a badge or a service weapon. But Cassius, the way I interpret his reaction, the Faison DNA took over. He executed a brutal, hyper-efficient, lethal takedown that snapped his attacker's arm in a fraction of a second. I felt a chill run down my spine when Cassius stood over the groaning man, his face completely devoid of Nathan's usual warmth, replaced by a cold, calculating emptiness. I feel so validated by Ethan's reaction in that exact moment. When Ethan casually strolled out from behind the shipping container, the smirk on his face wasn't just arrogance, it was the satisfaction of a hunter who just caught his prey in a snare. I think the writer's choice to have them meet in that isolated, gritty location instead of a polished office, or the middle of Charlie's pub was brilliant because it made me feel the raw, unfiltered tension between two dangerous men who operate outside the law. Ethan's dialogue was razor sharp. When he leaned in and whispered, "You're no cop, mate," I actually cheered at my screen. I believe this specific line delivery is what makes Ethan so compelling right now. He isn't intimidated by the Faison legacy, because he carries the Spencer and Sutton legacies in his own veins. The way I see it, the emotional core of this entire confrontation is anchored entirely in Lulu Spencer, and that is why I am so deeply invested. I feel a profound ache for Lulu every time she shares a scene with Nathan, especially recently when she had to frantically take a feverish Rocco to the ER for his infected hand. She is relying on this man trusting him, loving him, completely unaware that he is the twin brother of her deceased husband and the son of a monster. When Ethan explicitly threatened to march right over to Lulu's house and expose Cassius's true identity, I felt the sheer weight of his protective older brother instincts. I think the way Ethan's voice cracked slightly, just a fraction, when he mentioned Lulu's name, showed that beneath the hardened mercenary exterior, he is still the boy who fiercely loves his family. He knows exposing Cassius will shatter Lulu's heart all over again. And you could see that agonizing realization playing out in the subtle clenching of Ethan's jaw. I also absolutely loved the way Cassius reacted to Ethan's threat. I feel like this is the moment the actor truly got to shine as the villain he is meant to be. When Ethan threatened to tell Lulu Cassius didn't panic like a cornered animal, he went still. The way his eyes darkened and his voice dropped an octave when he told Ethan to back off was terrifying. I think the subtle shift in his facial expression, dropping the sweet Nathan mask to reveal the ruthless Cassius underneath, was a masterclass in microacting. It made me feel genuinely afraid for Ethan because up until now, Cassius has been playing defense, covering his tracks with Britt and Jen Sidwell. But in that alley, Cassius looked ready to kill, and I believe that proves just how dangerous this game of cat and mouse has become. I know some fans might argue that Ethan is being too reckless by confronting Cassius directly instead of going to Dante or the authorities. But I actually think this recklessness is exactly why the character works, because I feel like it is the ultimate tribute to Luke Spencer. Luke never waited for the police to handle his problems, and neither does his son. I feel so nostalgic and thrilled watching Ethan operate with this kind of rogue autonomy. When Rick Lansing was warning Sonny Corinthos that Ethan might be trying to infiltrate their organization, I felt frustrated with Rick, but watching the scene I realized Rick was half right. Ethan is a wild card. He isn't playing by Sonny's rules, and he certainly isn't playing by the PCPD's rules. He is playing his own game, and I think that makes the narrative infinitely more unpredictable and exciting. I genuinely believe that this confrontation elevates the overarching war against Jen Sidwell to a completely new level of intensity. I feel a deep sense of dread knowing that Cassius is Sidwell's inside man, and by threatening Cassius, Ethan has inadvertently put himself in the crosshairs of Port Charles' most ruthless new villain. I think back to the scenes where Sidwell calmly ordered Ezra Boyle around it, or when he coldly discussed eliminating Britt Westbourne. Sidwell does not tolerate loose ends. When Ethan threatened to blow Cassius's cover, I felt my stomach drop because I realized Ethan isn't just picking a fight with a Phazon. He is threatening the entire infrastructure of Sidwell's operation. The way I interpret it, Ethan's desire to protect Lulu is now directly colliding with his mission to help Sonny destroy Sidwell. And that kind of high-stakes dilemma is exactly what makes daytime television so addictive. I feel so emotionally invested in Ethan's hatred for Sidwell, and I think the writers are doing a phenomenal job of weaving past trauma into current motivations. We cannot forget that Sidwell is the man who nearly wiped Ethan's mother, Holly Sutton, off the map. When Ethan met with Sonny to ask for a job, the intensity in his eyes wasn't just about finding work, it was about vengeance. I believe that when Ethan was looking at Cassius in that alley, he wasn't just seeing a man lying to his sister. He was seeing an extension of the man who tortured his family. I think the choice to have Ethan clench his fists while Cassius tried to smooth talk his way out of the trap was a brilliant physical manifestation of all that repressed rage. It made me feel the historical weight of the Spencer, Cassadine, Phazon feuds, all culminating in this one dark alleyway. The way I see it, Ethan is now facing an impossible, heartbreaking choice, and I am absolutely here for the angst. I feel like the scene ended on the perfect note of unresolved tension. Ethan has the power to walk into Lulu's living room right now, sit her down, and tell her that the man she is kissing is a fraud. But if he does that, Cassius bolts Sidwell goes to ground. And Sonny loses his best chance at taking down the man who is currently threatening his entire empire and keeping Jason Morgan locked away in WSB custody. I think the lingering shot of Ethan standing alone in the alley after Cassius walked away, his face half in shadow, beautifully symbolized his moral gray area. I felt a profound sense of sympathy for him in that moment. He is a soldier who wants to protect his sister, but he knows that winning the war might require him to let her sleep next to the enemy a little while longer. I also have to praise how this ties into the broader canvas of the show. I feel like every time we get a scene with Justine Turner warning Sonny about how dangerous Sidwell is, it just adds fuel to the fire of this Ethan and Cassius conflict. I think the writers are brilliantly setting up a scenario where Ethan's secret knowledge becomes the linchpin of the entire Port Charles power struggle. When Cassius warned Ethan that he was messing with forces he couldn't comprehend, I immediately thought of Pascal, Sidwell's lethal enforcer who is currently hunting Lucas Jones. I feel a genuine sense of terror that Pascal might be redirected toward Ethan. The way I interpret Cassius's parting glance, it wasn't just a warning, it was a promise of violence. I think Ethan knows he just painted a massive target on his own back, and the slight arrogant tilt of his chin show that he welcomes the challenge. I know some viewers are anxious that this will just lead to another kidnapping or hostage situation, but I actually think we are heading toward a much more psychological battle, which I feel is far more compelling. Ethan isn't just going to wait to be attacked. I believe he's going to use his knowledge of Cassius's identity to actively sabotage Sidwell's operations from the inside. When Ethan told Cassius, "I'll be watching every move you make," I felt a surge of triumph. For weeks, Cassius has held all the cards. He's manipulated Britt, fooled Dante, and deceived Lulu. But now Ethan has flipped the board. I think the dynamic shift is incredibly satisfying because it forces Cassius onto the defensive. He can't just play the Sweet Nathan routine anymore. He has to constantly look over his shoulder. knowing that a trained mercenary is waiting for him to make one wrong move. I feel like this is the best they have written the Spencer family dynamics in years. Even though Luke isn't on screen, his presence is heavily felt through Ethan's actions. I love the recent scene where Tracy Quartermain had that emotional reunion with Ethan, telling him how much he reminds her of his father. I think that conversation perfectly foreshadowed Ethan's rogue tactics in the alley with Cassius. Tracy sees the danger in Ethan, the same danger she loved in Luke. I feel a deep sense of continuity and respect for the show's lore when Ethan channels that classic Spencer unpredictability to take down a Phazon. It feels right, it feels earned, and it makes me incredibly proud to be a fan of this specific era of the show. The way I interpret the current landscape of Port Charles, everything is a powder keg waiting for a spark, and Ethan Lovett just lit the match. I feel an overwhelming sense of anticipation for what comes next. Will Ethan tell Christina Corinthos Davis about his suspicions during one of their flirty catch-up sessions? Will he try to loop Dante in, despite knowing Dante's rigid adherence to the law? Or will he try to take down Cassius and Sidwell entirely on his own, risking his life and Sonny's grand plan in the process? I think whatever choice he makes, the emotional fallout is going to be spectacular. I feel so deeply connected to these characters right now, and I genuinely believe that this storyline, with all its twists, betrayals, and dark alleyway confrontations, is daytime drama at its absolute finest. I cannot wait to see how Ethan navigates this deadly minefield, and I will be watching every single second of it with my heart in my throat.